Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Lambeau Leapers Live. Alex is making his triumphant return after the ill-fated NFC title game show. How's it going, Alex?
It's going good. Busy off season, not for the Packers so far,
I'm
uh,
so sorry.
but yeah, busy off season. Things going on. Green Bay is in a position where they've got to decipher whether to kind of go all in or save money for future years down the line. So Green Bay's making a lot of decisions at this point, and we're just kind of going through those at that right now.
Right, it's been a little quiet on the Green Bay front from what I've seen. You guys re-signed Aaron Jones. You let Corey Linsley walk. Those are your two biggest pieces. But I haven't really heard a lot of any links. During the season, Will Fuller was linked heavily to Green Bay. What are you hearing? What moves could Green Bay make this offseason?
Yeah, so the one move we did make was the re-signing Aaron Jones, and to me, let's talk about that for a minute. That was a Super Bowl type move that they did need to make. There was the discussion of when the Packers drafted A.J. Dillon. A lot of people said, okay, well, he's going to end up replacing either Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams in the event that one of those two left. And when that pick was made, I figured, that's a good pick because he can replace a powerhouse like Jamal Williams. He can do that, and then have that thunder and lightning type duo with Aaron Jones, and that's what I always projected. And the rumors became where Aaron Jones might leave, and that became an issue. But I always thought that the best way to go about it was to let Jamal Williams walk, and then to have that duo of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So to have that now, I think that's going to be dynamic for Aaron Rodgers, important for the passing game, that play action. Which had so much success in 2020. I think that was the right move to make, and that was the first correct step in this offseason for Green Bay.
Absolutely. Jones is coming off another huge season. He made his first Pro Bowl. He cracked 1,100 yards. He didn't quite have 16 touchdowns like he did in 2019, which I actually called, by the way. Throwback to my wonderful predictions of in 2019. But, he's hyper efficient as he's always been, 5.2 yards per carry for his career, 5.5 this season. He's a threat out of the backfield. He's caught 45 plus balls in the last two seasons, and he's really dynamic. We have the argument daily, it seems, that running backs aren't that valuable. Well, Aaron Jones is valuable to the Packers offense.
He definitely is. Yeah, that's the talking point, that you shouldn't pay running backs. That's the new thing that everybody likes to go around and say, when in terms of building your team, but you have to step away from that and realize that he is so dynamic out of the backfield, catching passes. He's a good pass blocker at this point. He's gotten so much better at that since he's been drafted now. And just, of course, he creates his own yards. That's the number one thing. He's not a guy who's just profiting from a good O-line. He makes any O-line good because he's such a great, at breaking tackles. He can do it so well, and he never gets taken down off the first hit. Thinking back to this season alone, just some of the hits that he's absorbed and ran with, he's a yards creator. He creates his own yardage for the Green Bay Packers, and that's what makes him so valuable, not only in the running game, but in the passing game as well.
Absolutely. And Green Bay has one of the best offensive lines in the league, and I think some people can say, oh, well, Aaron Jones just is a product of the offensive line.
Right.
And I think it's similar to Derrick Henry, that a lot of Tennessee has a pretty solid offensive line. Taylor Lewan's great, but Henry creates a lot of his own. Aaron Jones creates a lot of his own, even when he's running behind Bakhtiari, even when he's running behind Jenkins and Linsley and the corpse of Rick Wagner.
Right. Yes. Yes.
He's incredibly talented back. I really loved him coming out of Texas, El Paso, right?
Yes.
Just such an exciting player, and I'm happy to see him get paid and stay in Green Bay, get to watch him the next few seasons.
Totally. I mean, the number one thing for Green Bay is if you're going to bring a guy like Aaron Jones back, which you should because he's a great player, it has to make sense monetarily, both for the Packers and for him. And they were able to find that match where his cap hit in 2021 is only $4.5 million, which is quite a bargain for a team trying to navigate the treacherous waters of the cap at this stage. To get that number very low, and in essence, really only have it at about a $20 million 2-year deal, basically, because then that's when the numbers rise in that third and fourth year. He'll have a $19 million cap hit in that third year. So to be able to get those numbers down early on and then be able to make a decision in that third year and be able to have him around at a low cost. That was important. And of course, he's got his guarantees. His future is secure. Great for the player to not have to have the franchise tag placed on him. And of course, great for Green Bay to be able to keep their superstar around. And I think he's really just coming into his own. I think he's going to have another dynamic season with a guy like A.J. Dillon to complement him.
Absolutely. And with A.J. Dillon stepping up, we do have to acknowledge the departure of Jamal Williams. He's heading east to Detroit to join the Lions. He and DeAndre Swift. And I don't know if they're bringing back Adrian Peterson or they're random, like Kerryon Johnson, guys like that. But
yeah,
I like Jamal Williams a lot, kid out of BYU. Was always like the second fiddle to Jones, especially the last few seasons. He's a versatile player. He will be missed, but I do think A.J. Dillon had some really good runs late in the season, and he's a guy that could maybe be the difference between like falling short in the NFC title game and winning the Super Bowl moving forward, just on like a game here, a run here, a run there, because he's really a bell cow. Green Bay is not going to use him like a bell cow, but he's a scary guy to tackle and not a guy you want to tackle in January in Lambeau.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the number one thing with him is he's built for the cold, the winter. He's tough. He's a tough runner, powerful. He's just built for it. He can take on 20 carries a game and then have Aaron Jones take maybe 10, 15, and then also catch 7, 8 targets out of the backfield. Mm-hmm. They can have that kind of complement where maybe A.J. Dillon runs the ball more than Aaron Jones. That's definitely a possibility. I could totally see that. The Packers running game, I'm not going to say it will be better, but A.J. Dillon going into his second year, he needs to learn how to pass block at a bit of a higher level, but he's built for that too. So if they can kind of have no drop off in terms of the pass blocking, which is going to be tough to do because Jamal was very good in that aspect. Tough runner, never fumbled, of course. We all know that. And so I think A.J. Dillon has some decent sized shoes to fill, but it could be a very dynamic running game with those two and potentially, another draft pick in the mix or something like that. But yeah, no, the running game, it's in good shape, but the loss of Corey Linsley will have an impact on the offensive line. It's not going to be easy. They're going to have to try to fill that void.
So do you think they're going to, fill some offensive line holes through the draft more so, or do you think they're going to have this like a small free agent signing that you bring in? I mean, Hudson just got signed, but maybe David Andrews out of New England, or like someone on the market now to play center.
Right. Yeah. So we've been hearing that they have been interested in some of those guys, like center Brett Jones from Minnesota, who's been a good player over the years, but they do have interest in linemen. I can tell you that. They're definitely searching for another veteran like they did last year with Rick Wagner, that signing. They're looking to add a veteran to the room to kind of complement what they've got. And I'm talking about the interior guys specifically. They're going to look to add an interior guy, a veteran, to go with the guys like Lucas Patrick, Elton Jenkins, John Runyon, Jake Hansen, even those guys that they've drafted last year and over the course of the last few years. They have some young guys in that room, and they're going to add a veteran, I'm sure, especially because of those rumors that you're hearing that they're looking for another guy to supplement that loss. So center is definitely, even a guard is one of the positions I'd say they might be looking at for sure in free agency.
And I know I did some guard research last year before the draft. Loved Runyon, loved a lot of what he did at Michigan, and I think he can be a good, solid pro like his dad was with the Eagles.
Definitely.
So of course, David Bakhtiari went down late last season, so he's a question mark. What have you heard about his return? Is his rehab going well? Should Packers fans expect him to start week 1?
I think it's a little early to say that, but they like his rehab. They do like the way it's going. Brian Gutekunst mentioned that he had talked to him just a week prior to his availability about 2 weeks ago, and things were going well. He's definitely progressing well. Modern medicine has really helped these guys get back quicker than most think and would have thought in recent years. So, to have a guy like him is, of course, of the utmost importance. Having him, we probably would have won the Super Bowl. So to get him back is going to be huge. But in the meantime, yes, they're going to need to probably add a tackle. I would expect in the draft. Losing Rick Wagner was, that's a move they had to make for cap reasons. He was very good at times, but of course they need to kind of add a young guy there behind David Bakhtiari and behind Bill Turner. Unless you move Elton Jenkins out, it's not much there at that tackle spot. So they're going to have to add probably, I would say, maybe that first round pick. If not, it's going to be a day 2 pick to probably grab a tackle.
Yeah, there's lots of good tackles this draft. I've certainly done some research on them for the Ravens with Orlando Brown, whatever the heck he's on right now. So, at the end of the first round, there's lots of talent. This is where you might get a Landon Dickerson out of Alabama. He may be a round 2 guy. I'm totally blanking on the guy from Oklahoma, Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey's great. I think he would be a really nice fit in Green Bay. I've seen Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan as a tackle mocked to you guys a lot. Yeah. And I think either way, I know Packers fans probably want to go wide receiver at 29, but
yeah. I know, the wide receiver, that position is the one that always gets talked about the most, just because many people, including myself, believe that if you add another guy there, I prefer a free agent. If you add another guy that maybe could help Davante Adams take some of the load off, you give Aaron Rodgers a legitimate weapon that has pedigree in this league. Allen Lazard was undrafted and has played very well. MVS was a 6th round pick. He's played well. But we need to have a guy in that room like a Randall Cobb that and I'm not even just saying a slot receiver, which I'd like, but a guy that Rodgers can kind of rely on a little bit more as just another weapon in case Davante Adams goes down. He needs comfortability. He needs that. And I think adding a guy like Will Fuller at a really, that's going to be a price tag that Green Bay may not be willing to pay, but somebody at that level would just make the offense really dynamic, especially with the play action pass, another downfield threat.
I love watching Fuller's tape. Even when Hopkins was down there in Houston, it really felt like Fuller's the straw that stirs the drink. Hopkins just gets his. Adams would get his, but Fuller was the difference between like a 4-12 Texans team and then a team that is making the playoffs and beating the Bills. Contending with the Colts, and I think that Fuller could do a very similar thing in Green Bay that. Adams is going to get most of the attention. He's going to get the doubles. He's going to get the shaded over coverage. But Fuller is going to be the game breaker. He's going to have a 200-yard game here or there. Minnesota, fix your corners right now. He's going to take Dantzler for 300 yards. And I think Green Bay has a good set of receivers. Like, I love Adams. MVS is essentially a 50-50 ball every time you throw it to him. I like what Lazard does. He missed 6 or 7 games this year, so getting him for a full season is helpful. I don't mind Equanimeous St. Brown, but I do think it's important that you tendered Robert Tonyan. He shouldn't be coming back unless someone overpays for him. So he had 11 touchdowns last year, almost 600 yards, and probably should have been a Pro Bowler over Evan Ingram.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I do like some of the guys we have. I think Allen Lazard provides – again, he can catch the football, and he is quite dynamic when you get the ball in his hands too. He's been that downfield threat, even in the slot too. He's very versatile in that way. And we saw in the one game where the Packers played the Saints, who have a great secondary. Davante Adams was out, and Lazard went for over, I think it was almost 200 yards. And he had a very good game. And then, of course, that was the game that he went down, ended up having that surgery, and that definitely derailed some of the things they were trying to do in the passing game a little bit. But to have him be a guy in that offense is important. So, of course, it's great that they have him back. Tonyan was that guy that Rodgers relied on, especially in the red zone. A lot of that rollout stuff, big 3rd down plays at the end of the game. It was going to be Tonyan catching a rollout, running upfield and getting the 1st down. And he was very successful in that. Didn't drop a pass, great hands. Very dynamic and versatile, great blocker as well. So, both those guys are important to the offense, but you could always use another guy. There's plenty of options available too still, and that's the good thing about where Green Bay's at. They're not going to be willing to overpay for somebody. That's why they're not spending right away. Everybody that spends on that 1st and 2nd day of free agency is always they're going to be overpaying for guys. And what Green Bay has done is wait. With the cap situation they're in, they're waiting, seeing, what the markets are like. And lucky for them, the positions that they have of need, like cornerback, like receiver, like defensive tackle, those markets are slow moving. So we're going to see some guys maybe looking to take 1-year deals a little bit cheaper than you would expect, maybe a bargain deal for a good player at a position of need for Green Bay, as opposed to overpaying for a guy maybe on day 1 or day 2, when you can get a guy who's just out there waiting at equal talent for a little bit less. And hopefully Green Bay can find some of those guys to supplement their roster. And that's how they're going to go all in. That's what they have to do to get those bargain deals.
Absolutely. And that's one that some of the smarter GMs, the smarter teams, they just sit back, they wait for those deals to like trickle through. And like New England has had a great offseason. They've spent lots and lots of money, but Green Bay is going to be like, okay, we're gonna take you for cheaper than you would have gotten if you were a first or second day signing, and we're going to take you, and we're going to take you, and they'll be back in the NFC title game in 10 months. So,
yep,
at least that's the hope. At least,
right, and you're exactly right about that. The thing about Green Bay is they're never willing to overpay. They will never overpay. They'll just never do it. They're going to stick to their beliefs. They're going to stick to their game plan. So Brian Gutekunst will not, overdraft somebody. He will not, he's not going to give up a pick unless he really thinks it's worth it. He values draft picks very, very highly. I mean, he's going to make more deals that are definitely beneficial to the Green Bay Packers than are not. He's going to make less deals than the ones that are going to come in and be great. He's going to avoid those bad ones more than he's going to make good ones, and that's the key. It's the deals you don't make sometimes, and Brian Gutekunst has really done a good job of not making some of those deals that a lot of Packer fans pine for, but they end up not being the right choice. So I think looking down the future here in these coming days of free agency, the Green Bay Packers have not signed a free agent from the outside yet, and they're one of 6 teams to not have done that. But I think that will change eventually, and they're just looking for the guys who are really going to not have a market that they like. And those are the teams like the Packers, even some of the other contenders like the Chiefs. They're going to kind of pounce on those guys that want to try to win a ring. If they're going to take a pay cut, they're going to do it with a chance to win. And like I said, their needs at corner, Richard Sherman, Patrick Peterson's still out there, plenty of guys, Xavier Rhodes, guys that can be true number 2s, which is exactly what Green Bay needs. They're still available. You look at the receivers, you've got Will Fuller, Curtis Samuel, among others. There's options there too. And then at D tackle, the options are a little bit slimmer, but you can add a guy like Jarrell Casey on a cheap deal. He can come in and be productive. Sheldon Richardson, or nope, not Richardson. The guy from the Saints that got cut, I forget his name. Rankins. I think he's still available as well. So there's some options, but Green Bay's going to wait, find their price, and if there's a bargain deal, they'll get it. But if it's not beneficial to the Packers in terms of they know they're winning that deal, they won't make it.
I think I would be really excited to see Curtis Samuel in an offense like Green Bay's. You get he's not obviously not the same receiver as Adams, like the technician that Adams is, but just the extra juice in you can give him a little sweep, you can get him on screens, you can get him underneath. He's terrific after the catch. You can use him as a running back from time to time. I think he would be a great fit in Green Bay. I
think he is probably what Green Bay fans would know as that gadget type player, that Tyler Ervin guy. If you're really looking to upgrade there and maybe pay a little bit more, that's a tough thing to do for Green Bay. I'm not sure they make this deal, only because they're probably paying $8 million a year at minimum for a guy that is going to be used a little bit more sparingly than a guy like Adams, who's going to be on the field the entire game. He's going to be a gadget type guy who's not going to get that same level of usage. And that's quite a price to pay for a guy that, like Tyler Ervin, was on a minimum deal practically, and he pretty much did what they wanted. So, yes, they could upgrade there, but I'm not sure they're willing to pay that price tag. I think a guy, they're looking for a downfield threat who can catch the ball and open the field up a little bit more. I think Will Fuller is that guy. But, of course, he's going to be expensive too, so there are other options. There's some that have gone off the board too that I thought would make sense, like a Marvin Jones. That would have made sense. But like I said, there are options there, and they'll be willing to add a guy if it makes sense.
Absolutely. And Of course, Green Bay has quite a few compensation picks, quite a few picks in the middle rounds. I think that's where you can attack the defensive line. This is the Dave Gettleman special. Avoid them in the first round. Like avoid Dexter Lawrence, avoid Derek Brown. Just pick up I know last year there were Khalil Davis and his twin brother out of Nebraska. Like they were great values in the 6th and 7th round, and you can get guys like that super cheap, super late in the draft, and you don't have to overpay. You don't have to go out and say, oh, well, here's $10 million to just stuff the run. You don't have to pay.
Right.
Like Dalvin Tomlinson, he got a bag from Minnesota a year after they paid Michael Pierce, which I don't think they can play together, but I don't know what the heck Minnesota's doing.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head there. Especially at the in the trenches, that the offensive line and the defensive line. Those interior guys, especially when you're looking at the draft, a lot of times you have guys at really small schools that can really play and have a lot of that technique and the correct hand usage and footwork and things like that. But it kind of all blends together. A lot of the prospects have similar. It's hard to decipher the differences in skill levels with such minute details and things of that nature. So you can oftentimes find a guy who went to a smaller school and had a lot of success, played very well. They're just not going to get that same level of recognition from teams in the draft as a guy who comes out of Alabama or Clemson from the offensive line. So you're going to find a lot of the gems, the guys that can play, like Green Bay has done for so many years. Corey Lindsey was a 5th-round pick. David Bakhtiari was, I think, a 4th or a 5th. All these guys that they bring in, Lane Taylor, late-round pick. Just Brian Bulaga was a 1st-round pick, but that's one of the rare situations where they add a guy in the 1st round. Most of the time, they're going to go out and wait. Elton Jenkins was a 2nd-round pick, and that's usually about as high as they go to draft a guy from the offensive line, because they're willing to go into those smaller schools and find a guy who played really well and bet on his potential.
Absolutely. So we're going to head to the chat for a question. This is from Owen Backup. What do you guys think on the possibility of signing Kenny Gallaudet?
That would be nice, but I don't see it happening. He's going to get paid probably over $20 million a year. If he wants a 1-year deal, I could see it happening maybe. But that would make it even tougher for Green Bay, just because they'd have to place all that cap hit in 1 year. And of course, that'd be difficult. So they'd have to give him a multi-year deal. If he wants to win and maybe take a little bit of a pay cut, I could see it. But that'd be tough for Green Bay to swallow that kind of contract.
I'd be interested to see him on a 1-year deal with any number of teams. Hopefully not Kansas City, but he would be amazing in Kansas City. Yeah. But say, like, if he went to Green Bay and played for a year, Adams and Gallaudet, that has to be the best duo in the NFL. And I don't really think
easily. Yeah.
Like, you're getting
Gallaudet is so good. Yeah. He's excellent. Really excellent player. With Detroit, I've seen him quite a bit. And he's just he's a guy that I said, especially early on, he makes plays, dynamic receiver, similar to Adams in that he can create a lot of his own route running and kind of like make his own yardage as well after the catch. So I think he's one of those guys that really can be a number 1 for a team. And it's rare that you see those type of players on the free agent market where you're able to sign them for free.
Absolutely. I just got a notification. Kenny Gallaudet is going to visit the Giants. So for what that's worth.
Yeah, that's been the rumored spot for him, the Giants. So of course, they could use a receiver like him. They can't really pay him though. So they're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, I think there's like a bit of yin and yang with Adams and Gallaudet. I talked about Fuller, and he's a little bit different from Adams, but Adams is like, he's always open. Gallaudet, he doesn't need to be open to be, open, like NFL open, because he just there was one game he had 6 catches, or 6 targets, 6 catches, all of them were contested catches, and he's one of the best in the league at that. And that's, if there's a flaw in Adams' game, he's not the best at contested catches. You get a guy like Kenny Gallaudet, and he's just a ball vacuum essentially. And that'd be Rodgers would cruise to his 4th MVP if you added Kenny Gallaudet, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But of course, you can just giving Rodgers another weapon would be, that kind of assures you that the offense is going to improve. Like, you need to, coming off a team that really looked like the best in the NFL at a lot of times. How do you improve? How do you get to a point where you can't, like, of course you can't go through a whole season and then lose again. I mean, it's getting to be demoralizing at this point. So at some point they have to find a way to improve to the point that they're going to look like the best team in the NFL, even more so than they did last year. And it's hard to imagine. It's a tough puzzle to kind of solve for the front office, especially like we said with the limited cap space that they have. So, I would like to see them restructure Aaron Rodgers, and I would like to see him extended, but more likely they'd probably restructure him to get some money. They haven't done that yet, though.
All right. So I don't know if we talked about this ahead of time, but I want to talk about Jordan Love a little bit. So it looks like he's going to be your number two, your backup. Tim Boyle, I think he's out, right? Just gone.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about Jordan Love? I don't know if I've gotten an opinion from you on Mr. Love.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say because he hasn't played a snap, not even in the preseason. So it's tough to evaluate him at this point. He had that great sophomore year and then a really tough junior year where things just kind of weren't great for him in the spot he was in. Not a great surrounding situation that didn't make it any easier for him to play well. So it's tough. I mean, I don't know exactly where he's at on the field wise, but they obviously want to see what he's got. If they're going to let a guy who really quietly was one of the league's better backups in Tim Boyle, I mean, he's a very good quarterback. He flashed a lot of stuff in camp, and I think last year they probably would have traded him if there was a preseason because I think he would have surprised some people, and I think he would have garnered a lot of interest too. At this point, they're not going to do that. They're going to let him probably just find a spot on his own. I wouldn't rule out him coming back completely, but on a smaller number. That $2 million tender was a little bit too much for the circumstances, but I can tell you that he's going to garner interest from around the league. I can tell you that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he lands somewhere else. But with Jordan now, he's the number 2. He's going to get all the snaps. They're going to see what he's got. And this is, they're getting to the point where they're starting to really evaluate what their future is going to be. Restructuring Aaron Rodgers or not doing it is a part of that. Extending him or not is a part of that. And this is all one big process that they're trying to determine, what's our future going to look like here. And we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, when you have Rodgers and he's coming off an MVP season, 48 touchdowns, almost broke his own record for passer rating. It's a tough situation because on one hand, he is 37. He's going to turn 38 late in the season. And you have this 22, 23-year-old, like, you think he's going to be a stud quarterback. You think he's going to be like Mahomes. You think he's going to be like this next one, the next Favre to Rodgers to Love, and you have 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in a row, which would be absolutely insane. But you're in a tough spot when Rodgers might be the best quarterback in football, but he's also about to turn 38.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to – I don't even want to, think about the idea that they're trying to get another Hall of Fame quarterback. I think they're just trying to get out ahead of it. I mean, they're just, looking at Chicago, what they've got going on. They've been searching for a quarterback since they got a franchise in the NFL. I mean, they just haven't found that guy. They've never had a guy like Aaron Rodgers, like Brett Favre. Green Bay's best 4 quarterbacks in their history are better than any quarterback the Bears have ever had. To me, I don't know. They're just trying to – number one, they drafted a capital player, a guy that they could flip for potentially more than what they've got. That's an investment that they made. And whether he sticks on the roster or not, they can get value for him, and that was part of it, I'm sure. It's tough because to be in that position, with the front office now making that kind of move, it just disrupted a lot of things. I mean, it really put Rodgers. It's hard. I mean, you upset your best player, you upset your franchise. I don't know. It's tough. And now they're in a situation where Rodgers doesn't know where he's at, and he wants a new contract with more money, extra years added, I'm sure. They haven't done that yet. And if they don't do that, he's going to be going into the season feeling like he's a lame duck. Like, I could be gone next year. And who knows? I mean, if Rodgers could win MVP again and maybe they still move on, that's this front office will do things like that. That's the kind of way they work. That's how they operate. It's really tough it's one of the most interesting, fascinating situations Green Bay has ever been a part of. And I'm including the fact that the situation with Brett Favre was just as dire and as crucial.
Mhm.
It's a very, very strange situation, and it's really hard to navigate. And I bet for Aaron and both Jordan Love as well, it can't be easy for either of them.
Right. And I was only like 6, 7 years old with the last days of Favre in Green Bay, but it it was it's crazy to think that you're Pro Bowl quarterback, you go to the NFC title game, you go to overtime, it's not a lost cause, but your quarterback is, nearing his 40s and you just jump off and like, we have this Aaron kid from California. What's the worst that could happen? And then you
Yeah,
win the
it's
Super Bowl
taking a
game.
leap of faith. There was never like a sure thing, of course, with Aaron
Mhm.
Rodgers, and that's what makes me think. There's a lot of potential for them to move to Jordan Love without really, even though Rodgers is great, and even though Brett Favre was great at that time, Brian Gutekunst might follow that same pathway. Um, I mean, it's really tough. I don't know. Number one thing I think also is the fact that you don't know. It's going to be a leap of faith. Rodgers is going to be playing well, I'm sure, at any point that they try to figure out what the situation is with Love. I don't know. It's just such an interesting situation. I mean, do they trade Jordan Love at some point? I don't know. It's possible. I wouldn't think it
Mhm.
happened this year, but the fact that they moved on from Tim Boyle makes me think that that expedited the process for sure.
Mhm.
Now he's going to get all those reps. They're going to see what he's got, and it's going to happen quickly. I'm just not sure where Green Bay goes from here, especially if Rodgers continues to play really well. I don't know.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that, do you move off of Rodgers like now, or do you let him play until he declines, or is it more of a Aaron Rodgers, you've been our quarterback for the last 13 years, you can control what you want to do, or is it going to be, hey, we want to move on to this guy. If you want to play to 40, 42, 45, go to the Jets, go to and end up in Minnesota. Like, we don't care. We want to start Love, and I think that's the tough thing about with anything, and that's one thing that New England had to ask themselves with Brady: is it worth bringing back a 43-year-old quarterback that just had a down year? Probably would have been, although New England doesn't have very many weapons. In fairness, well, now they do, but they didn't 2 months
Right.
ago. Yeah, 2 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with Jordan Love also, he wasn't that number one projected pick or anything too. So,
Mm-hmm.
and there was rumors of them being interested in Drew Lock, potentially in that second round just the year before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, if they drafted Drew Lock, would they have drafted Jordan Love? I don't know. And then there isn't that conversation of, Rodgers is on the way out. Just because they
Mm-hmm.
drafted a second round quarterback, that doesn't necessarily mean, but with the fact that it was the first round, they traded up for him. It wasn't that, number one pick falls in their laps and you take advantage of that because that's valuable. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if that, if we saw Joe Burrow fall to wherever Green Bay was at. I mean, if he was at the 20, if they traded up for Joe Burrow, if he
That's
fell to
different.
26, I would have been like, okay, well, that is a true asset.
Mm-hmm.
And if he works out, Green Bay has a good quarterback that was projected to be really good. They can keep him around, they can trade him, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's value. But to get a guy that wasn't projected high, might have even slid into the second round, trade up for him. I don't know if there's that same urgency of like, okay, this guy is our guy no matter what, whether Rodgers wins 2 MVPs in a row, 3 MVPs, a Super Bowl. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure. It's just so confusing. It's hard to really decipher what they're going to do. And it all depends on very different situation.
Right. And I know, from my stance as a Ravens fan, the Ravens were in the same situation in 2018. Lamar slides to the end of the first round. They trade up to get him, make sure you add the fifth-year option. And at that point, you just start the clock. Is it Flacco or is it Lamar? Is it Flacco or Lamar? And then Flacco gets injured in the middle of the year, and it doesn't matter anymore because Lamar starts winning a bunch of games. And I think it's going to come down to Gutekunst. If he can, if he can time it perfectly and say Rodgers is just about to decline and Love is about to, become like a supernova, I think that's something Green Bay would be. That's something that Green Bay is spending a lot of resources on and making sure they have the pulse of the team, at the core of what they move at the core of their moves. You mentioned Aaron Jones. He has 2 years before his contract really kicks up. Could that be like a 2-year push to get another ring for Rodgers or another couple MVPs for Rodgers? and then you like kind of restructure. You get more of an AJ Dillon with Love moving forward, and you build around that. So I'm thinking Green Bay has a lot of options, and I'm excited to see what they do moving forward.
Yeah, I think with Rodgers too. I think they probably thought he was on the decline when they drafted Jordan Love. He was coming off a year where he was good, not great, and then of course he has this year where it was the first year in the offense that year where he didn't have those same numbers, those eye-popping MVP numbers. He goes into this season, has those numbers, plays immaculate football for 16 games, and then in the playoffs as well has puts up a great showing. And then they're like, okay, well now Rodgers is back at this level, and the way he played, the offense that he's in, I see no reason to believe that he should decline at any point, really. Until he gets close to Brady's age, I would say, just because number one, they don't ask him to do too much in this offense. It's largely based on the running game, and all it takes is up here, that intelligence that he has that never goes away. And of course, his arm is, it's not going to decline, that arm of his where he can really just do anything he wants at this point. Even if his arm declined a little bit, he'd still be, elite talent arm in the NFL. And so with the Jordan Love thing, I think they picked a quarterback too early, just because Rodgers still has so much time left. And I get it that it's hard to know exactly when Rodgers is going to decline and things like that. But, in hindsight, looking at the way Rodgers played, I think they probably went, I would say probably 3 years too early picking a quarterback, just because I think he could play maybe until he's, in the mid 40s.
And Rodgers is he's a pretty motivated guy. Of course, Love just added fuel to the fire. I feel like he's a guy that's just going to kind of play until the wheels just totally fall off, just because he's a gamer. He's I know in Madden, his superstar ability was gambler, and he's for real. He's a guy that even if he doesn't have his best stuff, which he usually does, he's gonna will the Packers to wins from time to time, and it's special to watch, and I'm excited to see it moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I want to just say, and to end this here, with regards to free agency, my message to Packers fans is to just be patient and try to understand the process that Green Bay is going through at this point. The difference between Green Bay and these teams that are making all these moves in free agency is that they already have a roster that is NFC Championship caliber. They have that championship roster in their hands already. They don't have to go out searching for it. What they need is supplemental pieces. And then they're going to go and find that. And I'm telling you, they will sign players in free agency, and I think they'll add at least one player that fans will get excited about. But it won't come until the markets run dry, and they pick and choose for cheap money, like they have actually done very well with the Aaron Jones deal is a perfect example of that. And the restructure of Preston Smith, maybe one of Green Bay's best monetary moves that they've made, to be able to save as much as they would have saved by cutting him and then still keep him around. I trust what they're doing, especially with Russ Ball on the money side, and Brian Gutekunst. He will. He's added pieces in both free agencies that he's been a part of, and then as well as in 2018 with Mike McCarthy still at the helm. He will add players, but it's going to be one of those situations where it takes more time than usual just because players are taking more time than usual. They will add players. They will try to add to this team, and not just through the draft, but they will utilize the avenue of free agency to make the team better, and I trust what they're going to do.
Absolutely. So one final question before we wrap up. We have another show next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, yada, yada, yada. Do you expect the Packers to make I don't want to say a splash signing, but who's the guy on your radar that we're going to be talking about in 7 days?
Well, hopefully we've signed somebody by then, but I don't know. I think it comes at the cornerback position. I think the guy that teams are going to, they're going to be coveting, and Green Bay is going to be one of those teams coveting. I think they'll probably make the bigger signing at that cornerback position. Richard Sherman is a guy who I'd really, really like, just because I think if you add a cornerback to that Green Bay defense, that's probably, to replace Kevin King is probably the best way they can improve this team. If they were to add one player at any position, I think adding a cornerback to be opposite Jair Alexander would improve them the most. So if you get a guy like Richard Sherman, if you get a guy like Patrick Peterson, even Xavier Rhodes, if just all three of those guys have history of elite cornerback play, you have the potential there to have two lockdown corners plus the two safeties. You've got obviously the Smith bros rushing the passer, Kenny Clark in the middle. That's where you start talking about you have a potentially elite defense. It's going to be hard for teams to, navigate that. So I think their best bet, who we're going to be talking about, if they're going to add a splash type player, Richard Sherman, Patrick Peterson, Xavier Rhodes are the three, I would say, are probably the guys that you're looking at cornerback.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Next week, hopefully we're talking about Richard Sherman or Pat Pete. I prefer to talk about Sherman because I think Pat Pete is a little washed. But hey, it's the NFL. I thought Xavier Rhodes was washed, and he has this awesome year with Indianapolis. So, yeah, thank you for coming on. We will be back next week, same time, same place. As I get more car noises outside. So any last words before we end the broadcast?
Yeah, just want to thank everybody for watching, and go Pack Go.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel, no matter what channel you're watching on, Twitch, YouTube, whatever. Be sure to follow Alex on Instagram at Lambeau Leapers. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, we will be back next week. Make sure you like the stream. So, peace.